welcome to today's live stream. It will feature a rant because this person really pissed me off the other day. Just a couple of, I do have a main channel, my original channel, which is 10 years old. And over there, I post a new video once a month. And this month, I did a runway review, a group runway review with a few of my fashion industry friends. And we covered the spring, summer 2026 shows. And it was a good time. People really liked the format where we got the opinion of working professionals, and we did not necessarily agree with everyone else. Like, I didn't realize so many of my friends were anti denim. How dare they be? Uh, but it was a good time. A lot of people suggested I do it again. So let me know if you enjoyed that sort of setups, that kind of format, and I may do it again for the fall shows in February. And then, as you know, or may not know, my Croquis template sketchbooks are back in stock for the holiday season. So all the links to everything I'm talking about are at zoehong.com. Okay. If you get stuck on something, just go to zoehong.com. I have links to everything. I have the most easily readable website in the world. I just have a bunch of pictures of my stuff, and you just click on the picture and it'll take you right directly to where you want to go. Hello, Rachel. Okay. Second, Fashion School in a Book. This is my book. This is my baby, okay? If you need more guidance on fashion design and the entire design process, please go pick up this book. If you already have this book, and if you love this book, please review it at whatever website you bought it from. I would really appreciate it. It really helps me out. And if you already have fashion design knowledge, but you need a tool to help you stay organized while you work on your collection, okay, this is Fashion School in a Book design journal, where it is the workbook that helps you organize your thoughts and do your design process all in one book. And the paper is sturdy enough that you can draw and use marker on it and all those good things. So that's what I got on deck. You can put those three things on your gift wish list for the holiday season if that's something you enjoy doing, or that is something you can buy for the other designers and artists in your life. So there you have it. MM says, hi, Zoe, nice to see you. Same here. Jenny Campos, hey, so nice to see you live. Hello, Jenny. Carolina K, hi, Zoe. Hello. All right. So let's get to why we're here, the realities of starting your career in fashion. And so if you don't follow me on Threads, you should follow me on Threads, because I was on Twitter a long time ago, and then Twitter got weird, so I left Twitter. My profile's still there. I think I left a bookmark saying, hey, I'm not here anymore. But I'm on Threads now, and I post there more than I ever did on Twitter, to be quite honest. And the other day I wrote, students be like, it was easier to become a fashion designer back in the day when you could focus on craft and not social media, and then not learn how to sew. And yeah, I was making fun of so-called fashion designers who talk about, oh yeah, it's so hard. Social media, keeping up with social media is so hard. And it is. It is. I have made a living off of social media for 10 years. If anyone knows how hard juggling social media while trying to be creative in your everyday, I understand. But then you don't actually learn how to make anything. Like, sure. Yeah, go focus on the craft of not knowing how to make anything. Sure. It's actually still actively getting likes and reposts. So someone left me this comment, and okay, first of all, I do not ever go attack someone on my behalf. Not now, not ever. This is not what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm only reading this comment because they already deleted it. Like, I'm only giving you like all these details because they already deleted it. They never followed me on Threads, so you cannot track them down. So it's all good, okay? Anyway, this person said, I talked to the principal of my fashion school about job prospects, and her honest take was that there are more hurdles to jump now. You have to be prepared to be an assistant first, work hard for someone else's vision, move up slowly before you can put your own designs forward. And I responded, "What does that have to do with what I wrote?" And then they deleted their comment. But I'm pointing this out because this is something that this kind of sentiment about how hard it is to be a fashion designer now compared to before. This sentiment has been expressed to me many times. And so I want to address it. Okay. XSLN says, Zoe, please talk about fashion in the age of AI. I did make an AI video on the main channel, so you can go look that up. But I will probably do an update to that because it's been a while, like sometime in the future. Jenny says, I'm so invested in this rant, and then says, wasn't it always that way? Lol. Yeah, lol. Okay. So, other than the fact that they were completely like not on topic, I just really need fashion designers to stop thinking that they and their vision is so precious. And I say that as a fashion designer, trying to inject my life with more creativity and more creation all the time. And I say that as someone who has a strong point of view in where the direction, like the industry should go, the direction the industry should go, and what we need more of in fashion. Even as a person with this kind of ideas in mind, I need fashion designers to stop being precious little babies. Okay. Chaotic Pisces says, isn't it normal to work your way up in any job? Violet Femme says, hi, Zoe. Hi, Violet Femme. So I just have a few bullet points here that I want to go through before I address these comments. Number one, so this idea of school, first of all, it has always been one of my pet peeves when someone gives these sort of like all or nothing declarations about fashion school. I'm not a fashion school apologist, and I don't work for a fashion school anymore. And my livelihood does not depend on the success of any fashion school or all fashion schools. I'm completely independent of that. So I don't answer to anyone about anything. I see the good a fashion school education can offer. And I also think it doesn't work for everyone. But you have to make that decision for yourself after you do some soul searching and some outside research. I would not trust a single person who went around saying, nobody needs fashion school, or everyone needs to go to fashion school to make it. And this is the short list of the only fashion schools that are worth your while. Like, I don't think you should believe anybody who says these sort of black and white declarations. But the thing is, knowing that I've made my money off of social media, I know that those like loud, argumentative declarations are what gets the clicks, what gets the rage bait, what gets the engagement. And I understand people who do that, but you know what? I have made money without doing that. Okay. And if you have gotten angry with me about anything that I've said, I never said it just to make rage bait. I said it because I believed it. And so never ever believe anybody who's like, nobody needs this for this. Okay? I do believe you don't need fashion school. It's not like a medical degree where you absolutely need a degree and you need a certain amount of studying and passing specific exams in order to practice medicine. Okay? Fashion doesn't work like that. But at the same time, you do need to get your education somewhere, and fashion school can be a good place for that. That's not the only place for it, but it is a handy dandy one-stop shop for a lot of education. So that's one. Number two, fashion school does not prepare you for your entire career. It absolutely does not. There is no such thing as one school, one 4-year program, 2-year program that can prepare you for your whole career. Because everyone's careers, they start somewhere. They could all, like, 100 people could start at one single point in their career, and they will go branching off to all the million different kind of directions. And this is actually why, for the longest time, the only major available was fashion design. So everybody studied fashion design and the kind of classes that are around a fashion design degree. And then they went off and did all these other careers within fashion with that fashion design degree. And to this day, there are tons of people who start with the fashion design degree, do not work in design. They work in fashion, but they don't work in design. They have decided, oh, this sector of fashion actually suits me much more. I find this much more interesting. I went into styling. I went into merchandising. I went into visual merchandising. I went into marketing, like all these other fashion majors. And then the education, fashion education moves way more slowly than anyone ever thinks. Fashion education caught on that they could make money offering these programs to students because there are all these different majors, and they're the ones who was like, okay, let's do that, and started offering all these varied majors, all these specific areas of study within fashion. Okay, so that was the education market responding to market demands. And yeah, education is also part of the capitalist system. These schools, private or public, they want your money. Students are customers, okay? The only way things change at an art school or any school is for the students, the paying customers, to gather en masse and demand it, okay? Teachers will talk blue in the face about changes needed to be added to the curricula. It won't happen until the students ask for it. That's what happens at a lot of schools. And multiple students have to ask for it before these things get changed, okay? Back to my original point. Your 4-year schooling, or if you get a master's, maybe a 6-year schooling, it can only prepare you for the beginning parts of your career. Okay, I hear so many students who are like, oh, why don't we bother to learn how to illustrate, Zoe? Like, I know tons of designers who never illustrate ever again, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, I get that. Like, as a designer, I've rarely had to illustrate anything. I've done things as in an illustrator capacity and as a teacher capacity, but I don't illustrate things as a designer. And the thing is, though, you have to get those illustration jobs. And my department chair, correctly, mind you, said, beautiful illustration starts conversations. People would open my, like, fresh out of college, people will open my book and they'd be like, oh my God, these are so beautiful. And I have often said that good illustration is like being able to write beautifully. If you don't have a strong concept, it doesn't matter how beautiful your prose is. At the end of the day, you don't have a concept. But if you have a beautiful concept, but you write super janky, and no one can understand what you're writing because all your spelling is terrible, your grammar is terrible. And I'm not talking about like colloquial slang or anything like that, but just nonsensical grammar and poor spelling, and you have to kind of like pick it apart in order to get to your concept. People don't want to do all that work either. So yeah, illustration is a tool for communication for designers. And so learning how to illustrate also helps you just be like a really quick sketch artist working in the industry. And quick sketches also communicate really well for designers, especially in this global economy where you are going to be working with people who don't share a language with you a lot of the time. So what I'm saying is these beginner skills, in order to build up your portfolio and all these things, schools, the good ones, prepare you for the first few years of your career, okay? They cannot prepare you to how to be a creative director. How? They're preparing you for how to enter the workforce as an assistant designer and work yourself up to designer level and the skills involved in that. Do I think there should be more fashion school routes to entrepreneurship? There are, and it completely depends on where you go to school. Okay, and I've lectured at length in different videos about how you can pick out fashion schools and what clues you can get from their websites and things like that. But you cannot expect a fashion school to take you through to your creative directorship. If you go to a good school like mine, I went to Otis, you know, they I get the alumni newsletter and they, not me specifically, they ask alumni in general if we need help finding a job all the time. They remind us in the alumni newsletter, like, hey, did you know Otis has a job board for alumni? You know, like that sort of thing. If you go to a good school, they'll keep helping you afterwards. You know, they want you to keep working. And so you should be looking into those kinds of things. But the amount you can learn in school is limited. It really is, because what you going to learn in 4 years? And, you know, I hear more about students being sleep deprived and tired because they're going to so many classes than, and they're already trying to learn so much in 4 years. And is it true that they could be learning different things? Are there tweaks that can be made in different schools to better prepare them for the industry as it is now? Absolutely. And between you and me, that's my dream job. That's my dream job. Is I talk to students and I talk to industry professionals all the time about what skills that are needed to keep up to date in today's industry. And I want a school to hire me and be like, how can we update our curriculum? I want them to send me their catalog and be like, this is our program now. This is the core. These are our electives. You know, these are our programs. How can we improve this? How can we update this? Who do we need to hire? Like, that's my dream gig. Okay. I don't know if I've talked about this very often, but that's my dream gig. So yeah, there is room for improvement, but do not think that school is for everything. And so if you're not an idiot, you're supposed to be learning the whole time. Whether you're 8 months out of school or 8 years out of school, I learn all the time. Whatever, okay? And this has nothing to do with fashion. You should be in a learning mindset all the time. You're either in a learning mindset or you have your eye on retirement and you're like, I'm gonna peace out in a minute, bye. Okay? And fashion is kind of difficult because we sit in this sort of like intersection of trade and academia. We are not straight academia, but your average 4-year degree for fashion is a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts, which means that 1/3 of your credit hours must be liberal arts credit hours, which means English, art history, costume history. I took 2 different math courses. I took a class called Mathematics for Artists and Designers, where we learned simple geometries and modules and, you know, the kinds of math that artists and designers often face. And then I took a special elective, which was a trigonometry class for architects, because I love math. Don't at me, but, you know, there's math courses and that's all liberal arts credits. And so we sit, and then we have like the trade aspect where we learn how to sew, we learn how to cut patterns, we learn how to make things with our hands so that we could potentially work in a shop and crank these out if that is what your inclination is after school, you know. And I know some people where they really, you know, a couple years into schooling, they decide to change majors. Here's the thing is I have a really wide breadth of experience with fashion school because I went to one kind of very good fashion school, and then I taught at an extremely different kind of very good fashion school. The fashion school I attended was super teeny tiny, very close knit, like everyone knew each other. I went to an alumni event 2 weeks ago, and most of the people who were there at school when I went to school remembered who I was. And some of them were even still keeping up with my career now. Like I'd show up and they're like, congratulations. I'm like, on what? And they're like, your career. We've been following. I'm like, oh. And then I taught at a school that was massive. It was so big. I don't actually know how many students went there, but just the School of Fashion, we had 1,300 undergrads. When I was going to college, my whole school was 900 students, all majors, okay? And when I was going to school, fashion design was the only major available for fashion, but where I taught, they had marketing, merchandising, journalism, like costume, jewelry, like all these different fashion majors. Okay. And so part of it is we have all these majors, we have the industry is expanding. And I think that even for more traditional parents, having an artistic career is more accepted. And so schools are growing, schools are flooded with all these students studying all these things in fashion. And it is sink or swim. There's just way more people in fashion than there ever have been. So, yeah, it is harder than it ever has been. But that doesn't mean anyway, we'll get to that. Okay. So I want to get to this part where this person is like, this idea that you have to work for someone else and work so hard for someone else's vision. Like, I rolled my eyes so hard. I swear, just gag me. I need fashion designers to be a lot less precious. Okay. When I hear a 20-year-old talking about their vision, to me, it's kind of the same as when a 20-year-old says they met the love of their life and they're going to get married next month. Okay. There is a tiny percentage of people where that works in the long term. Yeah. And for the most part, no, because you grow and you change your mind, you read, you experience life, you meet lots of people, you study, and you mature, and the things that you want become different. And so to marry to a vision that you think is above and beyond so early on without really having had a chance to develop yourself as a designer is exceptionally egotistical. Okay. Of course, everyone at every age has things that they prefer, things that they love to design. But when I was a senior in college, and I was like, I don't want to do menswear at all. And my favorite design teacher at school was like, give it a shot. I think you could be good at it. Because he had already seen my work from junior year. And he was like, no, I think you could do it. I think you could do a good job. And lo and behold, maybe I did end up liking menswear. So what I'm saying is, when you're 20, your vision doesn't mean anything. And I'm not saying that to belittle you. I'm saying that you don't need to attach yourself so strongly to it. You can nurture it and evolve and not be so stuck in it. Okay. Now, here's the thing is I've heard this sentiment about working so hard for someone else's vision. And first of all, I feel like this is a new sentiment because when I was first graduating from school, and I know a lot of my fellow students had this shared sentiment that we were going to go learn more stuff and make mistakes off of someone else's dime. The number of embarrassing, expensive mistakes I made. I previously posted that I guested on this podcast where I told them my fashion industry horror stories. And there was one where I was responsible for this waistband screw up, and that ended up being quite expensive for my boss, but I still got paid the same, things like that. You are supposed to go work for someone else and continue your education and learn things and grow and make mistakes and collect a paycheck. In the same breath, I hear people talk about how, there are no apprenticeships anymore. That's called being an assistant designer. Okay, they just call it something else now, but apprenticeships still exist. You're working as an assistant designer. Maybe you don't get to make a lot of big shot design choices, but that's because you're fresh out of school. Nobody trusts you yet, but you're there, you're doing the work, you're learning, you get to sit in on meetings, you get to have access to all the resources that the company has that you could never have beginning your own company by yourself, fresh out of school. You get to go to trade shows off of someone else's dime. You get to walk around and meet people. And if you're smart, you're going to pocket all those business cards that you collect from other people. And it is not any different from any other industry. Okay? If you think about people who graduate from their MBA, do you think every single one is like, yes, I'm going to go start my first company right now? Are there people who do that? Absolutely. Of course there are. But yeah, there are more people who end up working for someone else so they can make contacts, make mistakes, keep growing, keep learning, make money, save that money towards their future, and like make connections with investors. That's like literally every industry. And so this whole idea of working hard for someone else's vision, it's like, it's so, it's a cousin to when someone calls themselves a visionary. And this is, I'm firm on this. You do not get to call yourself a visionary. If you call yourself a visionary, you are a pompous jackass. I stand by that. I've said this for many years. I stand by that. Other people can call you a visionary. Okay? Other people, when they listen to you speak, read your writings, and they're like, wow, this person really can see the future. They have a grand vision for the future, and I want the future that they see, whatever. Other people can call you a visionary all the day is long. You call yourself a visionary, you sound stupid. You sound pompous. You sound, okay? This whole idea of working hard for someone else's vision, being so beneath a fashion graduate is so freaking laughable to me. I mean, I could cuss because they haven't monetized this channel yet, but oh my God, it's so laughable to me. Okay? Listen, let me just spit out some examples. Number one, do you all recall how Yves Saint Laurent, the man, took over Christian Dior, the house? Okay? Do you know where they found Yves Saint Laurent? The people who ran Christian Dior? They found Yves Saint Laurent in their own damn atelier because he was already working there when Christian Dior died, and they're like, we gotta find somebody. Okay? And for my Patreon group, we have Movie Club. In our last documentary, we watched a documentary on Vivienne Westwood. And one of the people that was repeatedly interviewed was a designer named Bella Freud. And Bella Freud was talking about how she used to work for Vivienne Westwood, and she would tell stories about how the two of them were at side-by-side machines making stuff until the wee hours. And I don't know if you babies know, okay, people more my age might remember, but Bella Freud had her years in the sun where she was a darling of London Fashion Week, and whatever happened to her career, what happened to her career, but she had her day in the sun. She learned and cut her teeth at Vivienne, and then she went off and launched her own line. Okay? We've been talking about creative director musical chairs. The senior design director at Balenciaga is now the creative director at Area. Okay. Did you see the new Area collection? It was kind of cool, but I like denim, so that's my whole thing. And the guy who's the current creative director at Dries Van Noten, where did they find him? At Dries Van Noten. He was working there for 6 years, and so Dries, the man, handpicked him to be his successor at Dries Van Noten. And the guy who's at Mugler, and listen, everyone who watched my runway review video knows that I did not like the debut at Mugler. But he was over at Dries Van Noten. He was over at YSL. He was working at all these houses on their design teams before he was picked up to work for and be the creative director at Mugler. And I could start pushing out a bunch more examples, but that's literally how fashion has always functioned. You hear about these fairy tale like once very special stories where, like Jean Lanvin, she had a hat shop actually. Jean Lanvin had a hat shop, and she was making adorable little dresses for her daughter just on the side. And people kept asking her, "Can you make an adult-sized version of your daughter's dress for me?" And that's how she got started. And Coco Chanel also started by making hats. Madeleine Vianney worked for a long time for a different French brand. And I know what it's called, but my French is terrible. I don't need the French attacking me right now. But she worked for a different French brand for a long time before she started her own brand. She shut it down during the war, First World War, and then she opened it back up post-war. So I'm talking about examples from the 20s. This is how it's always been, and it continues to be. And we're only talking about the most famous designers, but even in the frame of the most famous designers, you'll see, I mean, Christian Dior, the man, where did he work? Did he work at Lalong? I think he worked at Lucien Lalong before he started his own brand. Christian Dior didn't start his own brand until he was, I'm going to say, he was well into his 40s. Okay. He was well into his career, and in a ripe old age, he was absolutely not a 22-year-old twink straight out of fashion school starting his brand. Okay. I mean, Yves Saint Laurent was, but whatever, right? So this whole idea, like, that it's so much harder now, it is harder now because there's so many of us, okay? The reason why it's so much harder is because everyone wants to work in fashion and everyone wants to be the top creative decision maker. And the field is flooded, and that's why fashion people get treated so poorly and are underpaid. Why do you think it is part of the reason why I decided to just exit out of the system until I could get a better footing. Like, it's kind of how I feel about New York. I told myself a long time ago, New York is for my kind of personality, okay? I'm talking just specifically for me. I'm like, New York is for when you are so young and hungry, you don't care if you live with 8 other people, or you're wealthy enough to actually live in New York. And I have never been either one of those things so far, so I have not been to New York. So, but listen, if a school wanted to hire me in New York, and so they asked me to go out there for a few months while I reviewed their curriculum, I would do it. Okay. So, my girlfriend, I was kind of ranting to her about this, and she works in the fashion industry. So she hears this kind of thing all the time. And she says, she calls it paying your dues. And there is definitely some of that. Some people do view it as paying your dues. I just think of it as just learning and pocketing just all the information, all the knowledge, all the contacts until you can strike when your iron is hot. Okay, this thing I'm doing right now with this channel and with exploring my creativity and just making stuff and trying to feel my way back into creativity. Like at the alumni event I was at a couple weeks ago, I saw another woman. She graduated a few years ahead of me, so our school time didn't overlap, but she actually follows my channel. And we were talking about how she also taught at Otis for a few years, like a while back. And she also talked about how being a creative teacher is not the same as being creative for yourself or for a brand. Because she also worked in fashion as a designer, and then she was teaching at Otis, and then she also decided that she wanted to study sculpture. So now she's doing that. And so she understood exactly what I meant by, like, right now I'm trying to like break out of teaching mold and try to like be creative for myself, which I'm finding hard to do because people keep asking me to make tutorial videos on my new channel. But whatever, it's like I enjoy it, so we're just rolling with it. But I'm really trying to just be creative to be creative. But I really need y'all to understand that I'm not trying to put you down. I'm not trying to say like you need to follow a certain path to get to, but I don't want you to be so entitled and precious that working for someone else is so beneath you. Especially if you have the privilege to work for a brand, any brand, whether it's famous or not. If you have the privilege to work for a brand that meshes with your style and that you enjoy that kind of fashion, that's a privilege that not everyone has. I know people who are anti-fast fashion, but had to take a fast fashion design job because that's the only way that they were going to pay rent. And I don't even hold that against them. They're not the ones that are destroying the planet. Okay. The CEOs are. But, so if you can have a fashion job where you're working for someone else and you can vibe with their aesthetic, A lot of us designers, we have different aesthetics that we can vibe to, different vibes that we have different sections of our wardrobe and things. So if you can have a design job that vibes with one section of your aesthetic, consider yourself blessed and learn and sit in on those extra meetings and get to know your bosses and everyone at the like I made a video on networking and how to do that. But yeah, do not ever think for a heartbeat that working for someone else's vision is beneath you. Okay? Like I like to think about Jenna Lyons. Who knows about Jenna Lyons? She was the creative director of J. Crew during its peak heyday, Michelle Obama wearing J. Crew era. And you can look this up. She worked at J. Crew as a designer for this department and as a designer for this department. And then she was design director. Like she moved up and got promoted. And so she was design director for this department and design director for this department. And when you have a company as big as J. Crew, yeah, you have all these divisions. I remember, I tell this story often because I still think it's funny. I have a girlfriend who used to be the design director of men's and boys knit bottoms. Not all the bottoms, no, for men's and boys only, and only knits, not wovens. So we're talking sweatpants, track pants, bicycle short or basketball shorts, like that sort of thing. It was like the company was so big that you have all these sections, and J. Crew, like their categories, I'm sure are different, but it's like that. And she just jumped around, leading this team, like designing for this team, and then eventually leading this team and leading that team until finally Mickey Drexler was like, hey, run the ship. So yeah, like that's how you build, and that's how you build connections, and that's how you build your career. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, that's amazing. But I still say that it's good to get your experience elsewhere. And working in the industry is not a waste. It's not a waste of time. It's absolutely not. It's a waste of time if you're stupid and if you don't maximize your experience. Okay, that's a waste of time. And I really need you all to understand that. Okay. So now I'm going to scroll up and address your comments. Jenny says, do you believe that for the best chance in the industry, you go to the most credited school or any great program should be enough for a successful career? Okay. It really depends on what your end goal is. If you want to work for one of the big brands that go to New York Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, whatever, you absolutely must go to an accredited, well-established fashion school at one of the fashion capitals and start networking as a student there. That's going to be your best bet. Okay. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's going to be the best. And I don't want to say the easiest because none of these routes are particularly easy, but that's going to be the most direct route. Like people are, like I actually had somebody email me about this and they're like, I want to work for a big brand. Should I go to Parsons? What about some of not great things about Parsons? And it's like, well, if you want to work in New York, you want to work for big brands in New York, and you want to work for a brand that shows at New York Fashion Week, go study in New York City. It doesn't have to be Parsons, but you have to go study in New York City and start networking and start interning at those brands and like start building up from there. You have to think about where you want to be. If you want to just be, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't care about working for big brands, then your geographical options for where you go to school are more open. Maria, hi Zoe, hi. Rachel, personally, I'm not interested in a 4-year fashion design degree, but I would love to do stuff like workshops or summer classes to sort of give my skill set a shot in the arm. Yeah, I say often you don't have to go to fashion school, but you do need to get educated. And so how you do that is up to you, but you definitely cannot just try to jump into fashion without learning some stuff, and some people, they already have like a degree in business, they have a degree in econ, or some other related degree. And so they use that and then they take some specialty fashion courses. They take a sewing class, maybe they take a class on fabrics to supplement that. Everyone has like a different kind of way of going about it. Carolina says, I do sometimes find that illustrating a seam finish is easier for me to note down some construction details than describing it via text, even just to myself. Oh, all the time. All the time. Because if someone doesn't know what a welt seam is, and it's usually a language barrier, like they know what it is, but they have never heard the term welt, you just sketch it. It's like, oh, it looks like this. And then you have like double needle top stitching, and they'll know exactly what it is. Yeah. So learning to just jot things down, which is okay, not to pitch myself again, but this is literally why I developed my Croquis sketchbook. So even if you're not good at drawing, you have all these templates to use to help you sketch. Okay. Flats on this side, figures on the other, to help you express your ideas to people, even if you didn't go through a rigorous illustration program like Otis does. Rachel says, example of a designer starting and ending with totally different creative visions. As Elsa Scaparelli, she started with knitwear. Haha. Yeah, she got famous because she had this trompe l'oeil sweater. And trompe l'oeil looks are still part of her house codes. But, I mean, her house codes are really broad, which is how Daniel Roseberry can do so many different things and have them still end up being Scaparelli house codes. Jenny says, everyone needs to stop trying to prove they're visionaries. Yeah, like a lot of the time, like I think about women like Claire McCardle. Like she didn't think she was a visionary. She just wanted to dress women, and we call her a visionary now because we think about what everyone else was doing at the time and what she had a vision for how women could dress and would want to dress, and and we see how influential she was over history. And so we call her a visionary now. I doubt she was going around telling people she was a visionary at the time. Ooh. Carolina says, working for someone else and learning with their mistakes reminds me of when I decided to learn how to cook while living with my parents, since at least they can help me clean up my mess while I can. Oh, you know what? Like, I'm not a parent. But like I'm in my 40s. So, these like social media algorithms assume that I am also a parent and I'm interested in other people's parenting stories. So they keep getting fed to me. And I saw this one where she was talking about how her friend was not teaching their kid how to cook and clean and take care of their own selves. And how her friend had said, well, they're turning 18 in a couple of months, so it will no longer be my problem. And I was like, okay. I know parents don't like it when non-parents judge parenting, but I'm going to judge this parenting. Your job as a parent is to help prepare your child for the adult world. And part of that is to teach your child how to take care of themselves, like learn how to cook, learn how to do laundry. And some things are easier than others for other people. Okay? Some people pick up cooking right away. Whatever. But yeah, it is your job as a parent to so yeah, make those mistakes at home. That's good. Elizar, and please forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Jean-Paul Gaultier said that Martin Margiela was working for him. He was good enough to start his own brand, but Martin wanted to work for him and get more experience. That's another classic example because, like I said, there's so many examples. Listen. So for my Patreon movie club, we did the Margiela documentary a couple of months ago. And I developed a platonic crush on Martin Margiela. And by platonic crush, I mean, it's not that I want to sleep with him and I don't even know what he looks like because, he's famously anonymous. Like, it's not like that at all. But it's one of those, like, the way he speaks about his personal history and his work and his design experiences and, things he learned at JPG and all these things, like the way he talks about fashion and making and clothes and everything, I could easily listen to him for another 2-3 hours. I was just so just watching this documentary, so happy to just listen to this gentle, soft-spoken, incredibly intelligent person. I loved it. And yeah, he was over at Jean-Paul Gaultier for a while. And then he struck out on his own. And he was able to get some of the fashion press to his first show because he had built that history at Jean Paul Gaultier. He had those networks, and he had reached out to those networks, and also Jean Paul Gaultier, he still supported him, and yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing. K Sintra says a lot of people like this also think they have to be successful before they turn 30 or else it doesn't count. True. And you know what? I blame those Forbes 30 under 30 lists. I know Forbes is not the only publication that does that, but Forbes does a lot of them. And it's honestly, like, I want them to do those lists excluding people who got like $1 million loan from their parents, who come from generational wealth, who, you know what I mean? Like, why did, like, there was this whole thing about Kylie Jenner being a self-made billionaire. It's like, really? No. I'm not saying shit about her. I am saying she comes from a lot of privilege. And so to put her on these like special lists is kind of a joke. Violet Femme, love Jenna Lyons. I love her too. And I don't know what happened. Like, for a while, she was doing this series on TikTok where she was talking about different fabrics and sharing her fabric knowledge on TikTok. And then I lost track and I never saw them again. I'm going to go look up. Mark Meelan says, "Come on, answer me. I don't know what you're talking about." Okay. I never saw any posts from you. Carolina says, at K Sintra, that urgency doesn't serve us, to be honest. We gain a lot of insight from maturity, which doesn't come soon enough for a lot of us. Yeah, this is why I am always talking about late bloomers, or people who so-called like find their fame late in life. Last year, so not fashion, still enjoy it. Do y'all watch the show Reacher? The new TV show on Amazon, not the old movies with Tom Cruise. So the guy who plays Reacher, Alan Ritchson, okay, he has been working in Hollywood as a model and bit actor for decades. And then he had been getting slightly bigger roles, slightly bigger roles, slightly bigger roles. And then he auditioned for Reacher and he got it. And he was just like so stressed out because he knew that he had to make that first season amazing. He really wanted to hold on to this role. And he was in his, I'm going to say 39 when he got Reacher, or when they came out with the first season of Reacher. And so, yeah, he has been slogging it in Hollywood for 20 years with very little recognition. I mean, he did do Blue Mountain State a long time ago, and I did actually watch that. I know my tastes in TV are like, but yeah. So I saw this interview with him, where he was talking about being bipolar and how like slogging through this unsuccessful career has affected his bipolar and vice versa, and now he's in his early 40s. He's doing big movies. He was in the last Fast and Furious. He's going to be in the absolute very dead last one. He's doing multiple seasons of Reacher. I don't know what else he's doing, but he's doing a lot of stuff, and he's much more recognizable now. And yeah, like sometimes your moment, it takes a minute, but you keep going. If you love it, you keep going. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of people like that. I was actually talking to my husband. So when I was growing up, I love watching Designing Women. And I was telling my husband, I was like, when I was watching Designing Women as a kid, and even when I was watching reruns as an adult, if you told me Jean Smart was going to be the one who survived and thrived and had the most incredible career well into old age, like if you told me that out of those five, the four women and Meshach Taylor, the guy who played Anthony, like if you told me out of them all that Jean Smart was going to be the one who's going to come out on top, like she was kind of, not that I didn't hate any, I loved all of them, but she was probably my least favorite. And now she's kicking butt. I love Hacks. Like every time I see her, I'm like, ooh. So yeah, sometimes you just keep going. You just keep going. Jenny says, "Have you heard of Marist College? I love their campus. I'm not sure if their program is worth it." I have heard of it. I vaguely have remember hearing of it, but I don't know much about it at all. I don't even know where they are. Uh, Daniel Lyon. Daniel Lyon. Hi Zoe, what degree certificates would you recommend for more opportunities in fashion aside from design? It absolutely depends on the direction you want to go. Okay, if you want to go in, if you want to become like a wholesale buyer, or if you want to work in kind of the planning side of fashion, maybe you want to go into merchandising. Okay, fashion merchandising and visual merchandising are different. Visual merchandisers do displays for stores. They design stores, they design window displays and interior displays every season with new collections that come in. If you're into marketing, if you love talking to people, you got the gift of gab, maybe you study fashion marketing. Um, Fashion journalism is an interesting thing because journalism is kind of a dying industry and people are growing increasingly distrustful of traditional media. And I mean that in terms of both journalism at large and fashion journalism specifically. That is not to diss my favorite fashion journalist, Robin Givens. If she ever sees this, I love you. I love your writing. I wish you all the best, the most successful career ever. But yeah, it is kind of like a weird, but at the same time, people are really making uh names for themselves through social media, like pitching themselves as a fashion journalist on social media, like less just like general influencer and more fashion journalist, where they give more background, more history, report the first news, like that sort of thing. Whereas influencers are more about like looking good all the time, marketing the goods by wearing them and wearing them to different places and attending shows, whereas fashion journalist content creators are really about sharing the news and reporting it and sharing and discussing different topics. So, there's that. So, and then you can also go into like fashion business management. I do believe that these are sort of like the less exciting creative careers, and so they have fewer people going into them, but this is kind of like a growing sector of business majors that specifically cater to fashion businesses, luxury fashion retail, like they're like MFA BFA programs for fashion business, because it's really becoming acknowledged to be a very specific type of business now. Rachel says, I really appreciate your tough love advice. Obviously, you do YouTube, Patreon, website to make some well-deserved money, but I feel like there's such a gift as well. Thank you. Rachel says, oh, it just said it twice. Carolina, okay, but we need our people to survive still. Okay, I don't know what that's specifically replying to. Carolina says, my chat is going to sound out of context a bit. Okay, Jinx. Cash to Wavy, would you recommend SCAD? I've heard excellent things about SCAD, but they like I know they have campuses in Savannah and Atlanta. Like there's Savannah College of Art and Design, but I know they have campuses outside of Savannah. And so they are far away from a fashion capital. So if that's important to you, then plan accordingly. Jenny says, it bothers me that not many designers are highlighting the world's issues in their work. When Dior debuted the new look after World War II using drapes because it was the only material they could use. Well, I mean, I don't know if Dior is like the most. I don't know if he's the first person I would think of when it comes to like addressing world issues through fashion. But yeah, nowadays people want to create the best product instead of saying this was made with this through this method because it was the best way at this time. I touched on this in the last runway review, but we are always seeking the ultimate in luxury. The luxury market is always trying to find that elusive quality that makes it the most luxurious. And luxury is wasteful, and having the luxury to be wasteful is the ultimate luxury. And this is why people who are in luxury do not care about sustainability, because it's antithetical to their whole idea of being luxury. So Celine Ann Rose says, I do vocational training. My country has also free one. I just need basic knowledge on sewing, pattern making, and some design. But I just love sewing as my hobby and love fashion history. Yeah. My name ain't Jeff. Okay. My name ain't Jeff says, talk to them in all caps. Okay. Neo says, hi. Hi, Neo. Zaruja says hi. Jenny says Marist College is in Poughkeepsie, New York. How far is Poughkeepsie from the city, though? Like, is it close enough that you could, like, drive in for internships? Listen, I grew up in Alaska and have lived in California for almost my entire adult life. And so my idea of what a big state is or a small state, like I always think of, when I think of the lower 48, I think of an accordion, like physically an accordion or a concertina, where it's like all squished on the East Coast and like expanded on the West Coast, because we have three states that make up the entire West Coast. I mean, before you get to Alaska, right? So it's Washington, Oregon, and California is super, super long, right? And then on the East Coast, like you could drive for 5 hours on the West Coast and still be in California. Like you could do San Diego to the Oregon border in like, I've done San Francisco to the Oregon border in I think 10 hours on average. Okay. So 20 hours San Diego to the Oregon border. But if you drove for 5 hours on the East Coast, you could hit a lot of states. You could, you could hit a lot of states. So I honestly don't know. Like if it's close enough where you could have access to the city all the time, and go in for work and go in for events. You know, I'm against unpaid internships, but I'm pro volunteering for fashion events every once in a while. Like a girlfriend of mine tapped me to work Vogue World. Vogue World is coming to LA. And she's like, can I enlist your help to help me run around Vogue World backstage for last minute wardrobe situations? So I'm gonna do that, and that kind of stuff is fun. And so, so I don't know where Poughkeepsie is. IRL Uzui, what you think is very important everyone should know about running a business? The number one thing about running a business is to understand your customer and to have an ongoing conversation, dialogue with your customer, because all the decisions that you're going to make specific to your business is going to be specifically to cater to your specific customer. And this is all part of when I was in junior high and watching Fashion File and fashion television and watching like, Jeannie Becker and Tim Blanks interview fashion designers like Karl Lagerfeld and Gianni Versace backstage at their shows. And they were always talking about, well, the Versace woman is this and the Versace woman is not this, and the Chanel woman is this and the Chanel woman is not that. And they were always like, these guys that are at the top of their game, they were always addressing who they were dressing. They were always like, the Chanel woman, she likes this, she's feeling this, she wants this, and this works for any industry. It's like, who is your customer? What do they want from you? What are they expecting from you? What are they anticipating from you? What is going to make them turn away from you? What is an acceptable margin of error? What is an acceptable margin of exploration? And really key in on what your customer and who your customer is and how they find you. Celine says, in many creative jobs, you need a lot of luck, hard work, learn a lot from many places to get your name somewhere big, getting connection. Yeah, let's talk about that luck component. Alan says, how quick can someone climb within the industry? Is it the same for everyone? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. One of the reasons why I hate unpaid internships is because it allows people who do not need to work another extra step up. There are all these like barriers to entry in fashion, and a lot of them are beyond our control. So if you come from a family situation where mom and dad sends you rent money every month, so you are allowed to work for free so that you can go and get the best internships at these big fashion houses. And why big fashion houses can't pay their interns is mind-boggling to me. When they're literally making millions of dollars a year, they cannot pay like at least minimum wage in their city for 3 months, but whatever. Like, if you are able to do that, then you get your foot in the door first. And then you get to have that name on your resume. And that could catapult you to a more permanent position at that place, or you have that nicer name on your resume for the next job. But if you have to think about your own bills and you have to make sure you devote time to working at a Starbucks and you don't get to reach for those best internships, or you have to take the lesser known design internships that actually pay you some money, then yeah, your climb is going to be slower. And fashion is a visual medium, and it absolutely judges you based on how you look and whether you look like you fit the vibe of the office. And some of that is in the clothes, and some of that is just in your face and body. So it's not the same for everyone, not even close. There is sexism, there is ageism, there is classism. All of the isms in the world also exist in fashion that affect how you can climb up the corporate ladder. Celine says, depending on what your small business brand that use dead stocks and sustainable method to create sewing is Copenhagen or Berlin. If your aspiration is London, Paris, or Milan, much harder. I mean, harder is different. Like, I don't know. My name ain't Jeff said, I said that talk to them while you're criticizing the Forbes list and young success. Yeah. I feel that. I feel that with my whole chest. I remember when I was much younger, I was talking to this girl who was trying to get her startup off the ground, and she works in tech, and she was like talking about her timeline. And I was like, I think it would be better if you waited 6 months. And she's like, if I wait 6 months, then I no longer qualify to be a genius with a brilliant tech idea. Then I'm just like whatever old person with a dumb idea. And it was like, man, those 30 under 30 lists really got to you. Like, oh my God. Rachel says, I grew up in the middle of Texas, so hitting a state border with less than 8 hours of driving seems incredible to me. Listen, I grew up in Alaska. And so this idea of driving all day and still staying in one state is very normal to me. It's extremely normal. Like, you could literally just, I mean, I grew up in Anchorage. If you wanted to get to Fairbanks, which is like the next largest city, I mean, you can't even get to Juneau by car because it's on an island. You have to get on a little plane or a boat, like whatever. Okay. I grew up in Alaska. It's 3 times the size of Texas. It's like literally, it's crazy. So Jenny says, why anyone ever thought unpaid internships were a good idea is mind-boggling to me. People always like to think about it in their perspective. They're like, well, they're gaining so much knowledge and getting to add us to their resume, and the opportunity we afford them is so precious, they can work for free. And it's like, but why does anyone owe you unpaid labor? Because you're still making them do stuff. Maybe they're not doing active fashion design, but you don't want them to anyway because they're still in school. But you're still making them run errands, grab rolling bins full of samples and push them back to your office, go grab you coffee, go grab your lunch. They're still running around working for you, taking notes at your meetings. Like, it's still labor. And if they're not working, then you're just not utilizing your interns well. Like, I mean, there's that, but that's also on you. So, uh, IRL Uzui says, "Damn, I'm not from your industry, but you dropped so much knowledge about running a business that I can relate to. You're like a strategic thinker that Miyamoto Musashi mentioned in the Ground Book." Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of things that apply to fashion that can be applied to other areas of creative fields and of business fields, because as I always say, fashion is the intersection of art and commerce. But I kind of like make sure I tell people it's fashion because I'm very against speaking out of turn, speaking out of my area of expertise. Like if I don't know something, I'll just say, like, I don't know. I don't have experience with that. Jenny says, "What was it like growing up in Alaska?" And then she says, "No, literally, because they wouldn't work for free to learn the same things." Growing up in Alaska was super fun. I did live in a small city. It was 250,000 people at the time I lived there, and now it's about 300,000 people. And so you get the small city stuff. We had a proper downtown, things like that. But then we're so close to nature all the time. I grew up hiking and camping and fishing, and we would drive to Ninilchik for salmon fishing. We would drive to Seward, and which also took 8 hours, and that sort of thing. And Denali National Park was there, and all those stereotypes of moose just walking the streets, 100% correct. Like, you grow up just knowing that you might be walking to school and a moose will be chilling in your path. You got to figure out a way to get past the moose or find another way to school. Sometimes, when you're little, you're like, you would end up late to school and be like, I had to walk around a moose. And your teacher's like, oh, okay. If you had a nice teacher, they would be understanding. And all those TikToks you see of moose just like chilling by your car when you get up in the morning, also true. All those TikToks of small black bears just like rummaging through your trash, also true. Yeah, so you learn how to. I'm not saying we learn to fight wildlife. We learn safety precautions. Okay, like when you go to school. And I don't know if it's true of every place, but you know how like in the beginning of school, you get a school bus safety video. Everybody has to watch the safety video of how to behave on the school bus and when to cross and what those flashing stop sign lights mean. But in Alaska, because we are also Ring of Fire, we get an earthquake safety video. We also get earthquake drills sporadically year round. And we also get a hypothermia prevention video at the beginning of the year. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, I've been talking for over an hour. All right, I'm gonna clock out. I'm defo clocking out today. Today's my husband's birthday, so I'm clocking out. I'm gonna take him we're gonna go explore some new pastry places. He loves nothing more than like a very delicately decorated pastry. So I'm going to go buy some for him for his birthday. Do you apply graphic design principles in fashion? Okay, first of all, they're not graphic design principles. They are design principles that can be applied to any design field. And if you go to my main channel, then you will see I do have a series on design principles applied to fashion design. Okay. I grew up in Switzerland in a small city of 16,000 people. Yeah, see, that's more rural than us. Carolina says, a hypothermia prevention video is crazy to me living in a tropical country. Yeah, the number one thing is if you think that you have like your hands are frozen or something, do not plunge them into hot water. Absolutely not. It's kind of like when you want to defrost frozen meat, you'll rot it if like you throw it in hot water. You want to like bring your temperature up slowly, so you put your hands in cold water first. It's super cold water, but it's still warmer than ice. So you put your hands in super cold water and it'll slowly but steadily raise the temperature. So that's your hypothermia tip of the day. But also wear gloves and socks and stuff. Okay. Rachel says, happy birthday to your husband. Hope you all have fun. Joy says, hi, Zoe. Love your videos. Irola says, thank you for today's stream. Happy Diwali to you and your family. Oh, happy Diwali to you too. All right, bye, everyone. See you Friday. New video on this channel on Friday. And then new live stream next Tuesday as usual. All right, bye.